members of the committee to please raise their WebEx hand. Okay. Thank you. I see Alan. I see Welch, Mendes, Sledge, Parker, Jones, Sepulveda. Okay. I don't see Hauser. Steve Taylor. Okay, all right. I see everyone except for Councilmember Hauser. So that means we have 9 present. Thank you all so much. If you will please put down your WebEx hand. I'm going to.
Councilmember Hauser is on, Zolfat. I just don't see her in the list, but she's on. I see her face.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see her now. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Hurt. Thank you, Councilmember Hauser. I see your hand now. All right, I'm going to read the electronic motion pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 65 regarding electronic meetings. I made a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metropolitan Council and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Can I have a motion, please? Second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Sofat, before we get started?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way that we can have our meeting before budget? Because I know budget just has a lot to do and it's probably difficult for them to estimate how much time. But it seems that every month when we're after budget, our meeting starts anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half after it's supposed to. Is that something someone else dictates, or can we request that our meeting be before budget?
Okay, thank you. But we can discuss that after. But I want to, since we already have a motion that we're about to take a vote on, can we finish that and then go from there? Would that be okay? Thank you. All right. I have a motion and a second, and then we need to take a roll call unless there's a discussion on the motion for the electronic meeting. If there's no discussion on that, then let's do the roll call for that. Alan?
Aye.
Hauser?
Aye.
Mendes?
Aye.
Parker? Sepulveda?
Aye.
Sledge? Taylor?
Aye.
Toombs?
Aye.
Welch?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. We'll talk about the scheduling and the timing after we take up this one legislation that we have. I want us to make sure that we have time to talk about that. And then if we still want to discuss the scheduling, we can talk about that later since it's so late. So we only have one bill before us, and that's BL 2020-456. Allen, Jones, Bradford, and Taylor amends the Metro Code to require landlords to provide notice to tenants prior to termination of tenancy and non-renewal of a lease. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you.
It says you have an amendment and a substitute.
Yes, ma'am. Again, because I didn't know how much time we would have in order to think through this, I have thrown everything out there that was worthy of discussion, but we may not necessarily want to deal with all of it. I definitely, I have a simple amendment that was suggested by Director Cooper, just to be sure that we were not counter to any state code. And I think I'd like to move that first and just get that out of the way. So there's an amendment that simply spells out that the $50 fine only applies to subsection C. So I would move that amendment and then.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
I have a question regarding the amendment. Is that $50 per day or $50 per what?
As was discussed at the last meeting, the state law allows judges to say that it's per day, and I'll get somebody from legal to just, and I don't have to spell that out here, but I think there is some discretion there. If Mr. Cooper wants to add to that, I would welcome his expert comment.
Yes, that's correct. The code allows us to seek per violation per day, and then it will be up to the court to determine the amount of the fine.
Councilmember Hauser, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I wanted to make sure that it was per day. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we're about to vote on the amendment. And so, Councilmember Allen,
Aye.
Hauser,
Aye.
Mendes,
Aye.
Parker, Sepulveda,
Aye.
Sledge, Suara is a aye, Taylor,
Aye.
Toombs, aye, Welch.
Aye.
So we have 8-4, 0 against, 0 abstention. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you. Now, I do have a substitute that is a possibility thrown out there simply as a way to work with Councilmember Taylor, who has worked so hard on Bill 224, which dealt with the sale of property. This bill that we're considering it now, 456, deals simply with termination of a lease and actually non-renewal of a lease more than anything, just to make sure that people get adequate notice to be able to find new accommodations if that's needed. The substitute is simply thrown out there if, and I will just put him on the spot, if Councilmember Taylor feels like this would be a way to incorporate what he was hoping to accomplish with his bill, and he's not planning to bring his bill back, I offer this as a possibility that might kill two birds with one stone. But if he does not feel like this accomplishes what he wanted to, then I'll simply move forward with my bill as we have amended it. So I would welcome his comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen, will you give us just a quick description of the substitute?
I'm happy to do that, and I'm gonna need some legal folks to jump in and interpret for me. So what this says is that when the lease has been assigned, and that's legal language I need someone to expound on, then the person to whom the lease has been newly assigned would have a duty to notify the tenants within a certain amount of time. I believe it's
14 days.
2 weeks notice, yeah, to give them notice that there's a new person to be dealing with, and then if necessary to let them know that that they would need to be vacating at some point if that is relevant. And then it continues with the part that I have been working on with regard to non-renewal of lease. So again, I would ask if Council Member Mendez would like to comment on that, since he is the legal genius behind this. And also if he could explain further what assignment of lease means, because if it doesn't necessarily mean sale, then that may not be doing the job that we need it to do anyway. So if I could get more input from other council members, that'd be great. From Councilmember Mendez.
Councilmember Mendes, you're recognized, but while you're answering that question, if you would answer this as well with it, I know there is a 60-day in the other one that Councilmember Allen had. And so would there be, is it just 14 days now, or is there another length of time also? I know they have to notify within 14 days, but do they give the tenant any time at all to vacate? If you will address that as well. Councilmember Mendes.
Thanks. I'm not going to compare and contrast the bills because I think that's unhelpful. This is built around the idea that a seller giving notice was always completely impractical. And I'm probably a little overly hungry and low blood sugar, so pardon my bluntness and directness. But the seller giving notice was always, in my mind, unworkable. You know, if any of you put your house on the market and you had to give notice about whether the buyer was going to build a swimming pool in your backyard, you would never be able to do that because you don't have a crystal ball and you don't know what the buyer is going to do. Similarly, every version that we've had before now forces, as I've talked about before, forces a seller to guess the future. Every day in Nashville, when rental units are sold, the vast majority of them are not kicking any tenants out. And so assignment is when there is a real estate transaction, a sale for a piece of property that has rental units subject to a lease. You'll have multiple documents. You know, most of you've been at a real estate closing. There's a big pile of stuff to sign. And one of the things that gets assigned is interest in real estate contracts, leases. And there's a piece of paper that says assignment of leases. And that conveys the legal title of the lease from the seller to the buyer. It's the same way that you would, if you buy a car, you'll get the assignment of the title from the old owner to the new owner. And so every time that there's a lease for a tenant, the seller can only sell the rights that he has that are subject to a lease, and that's what the assignment is. And like Councilman Allen, I'm not trying to convince anybody real hard about this because I know everybody's mind is pretty made up about it. But what this would do is make it so the buyer who knows what they're going to do would give notice to a tenant. Almost always that wouldn't happen because people buy property in order to have the tenants, to have the income. And when they do want to get rid of the tenants, they would be required to give the notice here. The other thing that this does on Councilman Allen's part of the legislation is to the stuff that is deleted toward the bottom of the substitute is just the restatements of state law and leaves the one piece that she was always aiming to get in about covering a situation where a lease might inadequately provide notice or there is no lease. So I know that's confusing to a lot of folks and it's a lot of legalese, but it fundamentally shifts the obligation from the seller to the buyer to give notice to tenants because the buyer is in a better position to know what's happening with the property.
Thank you,
Mr. Cooper. If I didn't do a good job with that, Mr. Cooper can feel free to jump in.
That was all correct.
So Director Cooper, to the question that I asked before, and I think that the way that amendment works, where it crosses out some lines and leaves some lines, I still try to understand what all that means. And I know the crossing out means that is no longer applicable. And so I go back to the question of if a buyer assumes the lease or the lease is assigned, in this case, I'm assuming that means that all the terms of the lease that they are assuming or that is assigned to them stays. They have to honor that lease as it is. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then in the event that there's no language in the lease that they assume about termination of lease or the sale of a lease, then we are saying that there should be a notice of sale given or a notice of not renewal given. Is that still there?
That's correct. The 60-day notice for non-renewal is still in the bill.
Okay, but if the lease has something else, then they go by what is on the lease that they're assuming now.
Right. If the rental agreement has a longer term, then that one prevail.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Botello. Oh,
Thank
I
you.
see your hand is down. Councilmember Mendez, do you?
No, I'm okay. I'm ready. I take
okay.
it. So my process is to take my hand down so I'm not called on again before I speak.
Okay.
Anyhow, so no, thank you all, Chair. I would like to respond to Councilmember Allen. Yes, I will definitely be a sponsor on this substitute as well. I would, when we substitute a bill, my name will be removed as a sponsor on the current bill now, but I will definitely sign back on to this bill in support.
All right. Councilmember Hauser.
Sorry. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. So this bill only refers to tenants who have a lease, not to tenants that are month to month or something other than a lease. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, should I respond to that?
Yes, Councilmember Allen. I thought that
So,
Cooper was going to do it.
As the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act currently addresses month-to-month leases require a 30-day notice and week-to-week leases require a 10-day notice. It does not specify any kind of notice for non-renewal of lease for a 12-year lease. I mean, a 12-month lease. And so this bill and the substitute that we're now considering keeps that piece of the original 456 that says for a 12-year tenancy, 12-month tenancy, sorry. If you haven't already spelled out in the lease that when you're going to give notice about renewing or not renewing the lease, then it defaults to 60 days. That is included in this now, as well as some notification requirements from the buyer once a property actually changes hands. And again, if I could get Mr. Cooper to clarify, is assigning the same as selling, or if you sell, do you always make a new assignment, or can you do one without the other?
If you sell, you would always have an assignment of leases, like Councilmember Mendez said. It's possible, I know, in commercial leases, you might assign certain rights as a landlord to a creditor, for example. But what we're talking about here is you're selling the property and you're assigning the lease rights that go along with that.
Okay, and that typically happens at closing?
Right.
Okay.
Councilmember Hauser? Councilmember
Fine, that answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. But it did raise one for me. And Councilmember Allen, you said that typically the law governs for the week to week and month to month. But what if there's no lease agreement in place for a month to month? What happened in that case?
My understanding is that if a tenant is paying on a monthly basis, that is considered a month-to-month tenancy, and that is covered under URLTA as a month-to-month tenancy. Again, I will defer to Mr. Cooper to confirm if I've understood that correctly or not.
So under the state law, if you don't have a written lease agreement, then it is the default is month to month. You can have a 30-day written lease, but the default is if you don't have a written lease agreement, then it's month to month.
Okay. Do we? Okay. I guess what I was going to say, and maybe that's what Councilmember Allen wants to address, is that is this something that will be conveyed to the renter by the person that got this new assignment, that this is what they have now? I'm just trying to make sure that that we cover everyone as best as we can.
So under the substitute, once the rights are assigned, then the new owner has 14 days to give the tenants notice of who they're supposed to send the rent to and any other applicable information that is required regarding termination or whatever. But it would be on the new buyer. It would be their responsibility to notify the tenant.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you. So I appreciate the input from Councilmember Taylor. That gives me guidance. So with that, I would like to move the substitute, but I will need to make an amendment to the substitute, which I got some feedback today, which is a somewhat housekeeping amendment. And so I would ask Mr. Cooper if I could file that tomorrow as a late filed amendment and get it approved through Rules Committee, if that's a proper way to proceed.
That is an option for proceeding. Yeah.
Okay, or I could defer one more time and then take it that way if we need to. Okay, that's good to know. So with that, I will move the substitute and then have a very brief discussion about the amendment that I would need to make.
All right, can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, any discussion? Councilmember Mendez, your hand is up.
I was just going to ask what the housekeeping amendment was.
Thank you. It's a lawyerly thing, so I'm glad you asked. I had a representative from the Greater Nashville Apartment Association ask that I say instead of the owner providing their name, that the assignee's name, address, telephone number, et cetera, if applicable, be that they assign the assignees that they provide the number of the owner's representative. My understanding is that it's rarely the owner telling the tenants who they are. It's telling them who the manager is that they're going to be dealing with. Do you have comments on that, Mr. Mendez?
Um,
I can forward you the exact language.
Thank you. I guess, well, I would think it should be both, not in place of. I mean, that's why I would be accustomed to. I mean, part of the reason, anyway, that's my answer, is that I would think it should be the assignee's name, address, telephone number, and their authorized representative.
Yeah, this says the assignee's agent as opposed to the assignee.
Yeah. So, Chair, if I may.
Yes, Councilmember Mendez.
Well, I can, maybe we can deal through Mr. Cooper, but I would think it would be the assignee's name and the assignee's agent's name, address, telephone number, and email address. I mean, the tenant is still should be entitled to know who owns their lease.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So my proposal would be to move the substitute to possibly have a late filed amendment, but if it needs further discussion, then there's the possibility of deferring on the floor one more time tomorrow and getting that amendment to everyone's satisfaction and moving forward. So with that, I move the substitute.
All right, can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, any further discussion? I think we've discussed it all. Now we're going to get to the vote. Councilmember Allen?
Aye.
Hauser?
Aye.
Mendez?
Aye.
Parker? Sepulveda? Sledge?
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Suarez is an aye. Taylor?
Aye.
Toombs? Aye. Welch?
Aye.
All right.
Chair, Parker is an aye as well.
Oh, thank you. Okay. 10 in favor, 0 against, and no abstention.
Thank you. So now I move the bill as substituted.
All righty. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. I don't think we need any discussion. I'm looking if anybody has anything to say. I think we talked. Councilmember Allen is the only one up there. Okay. All right, so now we're going to move the bill as substituted. Councilmember Allen,
Aye.
Hauser,
Aye.
Mendez,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Sepulveda,
Aye.
Sledge,
Aye.
Swara is aye, Taylor,
Aye.
Toombs,
Aye.
Welch.
Aye.
All right, you approve the bill as substituted, 10-4, 0 against. And that's the only bill we have before us. Before we go, Councilmember Hauser wants to talk about the schedule. One of the reasons why I asked for us to be moved to after budget was because when the original schedules were done 2 or 3 meetings ago, we were only given 15 minutes. And some of this discussion is taking a lot of time. And when we tried to schedule something outside of the Monday, Tuesday, it was impossible for us to do it. Ms. Rosie couldn't get us to agree on a day and time that works for us. In addition, we were looking into, I think Councilmember Allen last year was having people come and talk to us. And I wanted to continue that trend because there's so much information out there that impacts what we do. And I don't know about all of you, I don't know if we know all of it, and some of it is still changing. So I figured the 15 minutes was not enough for us, which is the reason why I requested that we're moved. I don't think budget is supposed to go this late every time. I hope it doesn't. But if there's no objection, I still want us to keep it after budget, because 15 minutes is just too little. Unless there's a conversation going on and I don't know how that will pan out, there might be a recommendation that we look at alternative week, or maybe look at a Thursday before the meeting or something. I don't know if we're open to that, but I just think that 15 minutes is not enough to be able to discuss some of these things. And we've had some bills that have taken some time. So if you all have anything to say about that, if it's the will of this body to go back to the 3 o'clock or 3:30, 15-minute schedule, we can honor that, but I'm just saying that I don't think there's enough time. So Councilmember Allen.
And I agree with you, 15 minutes is not enough time. Maybe we just need to request that budget actually be allocated the time they need. So if we know we're not going to start till 7 o'clock at night, then we plan to not start till 7. But if we plan on starting at 5:30 and we don't start to almost 7 o'clock, then if we're going to have any speakers or anything, we've made them stay on the line for an hour and a half before they even get started. So maybe the issue is not necessarily whether we're before or after, but maybe that the timing be closer to actuality.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you. I think Councilmember Hauser raises a good point. Also, so maybe it's possible just to do a doodle poll and throw out some schedule options and see what people come back with in terms of what their availabilities would be on other times. But I agree that later and having more time to discuss things is preferable.
Thank you. We did do a doodle poll. Thank you. I did send a doodle poll when I was trying to figure out the time to have a meeting, and Ms. Rosie took that poll for me, and we could not have a consensus. We do not have a quorum because everybody has different time and people don't want to meet on certain date, and understandably so, because we all have other things that we do. So we did try that, but I'm willing to try it again if that's what we want to do. But it seems as if we're saying after is okay if we can get it to work. Councilmember Welch.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I know that I am one that I have many, many different things going on in my life and different places where I work and different things that I have to do. So for me, to be able to maintain a schedule that all of my committee meetings and all of my council things are in the weeks that are already defined for council works so much better for me, because then I can throw my attention to the other things that I need to do in the off weeks. So is there something that stops us from calling meetings earlier, 2 o'clock or whatever? I've never quite understood why we tend to start everything so late. I know, for example, in Memphis, council meetings start at 9 a.m. and they go through the day like a normal workday, which kind of matches up to how many of our council meetings have been. They are a full workday, but we're just starting later in the day and having a full workday after we've already had a full workday. So I'm just wondering, is there a possibility that we could simply move things back and start our meetings at 2:00 and move so that we each have a proper amount of time to properly address our committee issues, but not encroach on the other weeks or Friday evenings at 5:00 when it's really, really difficult based on all the competing schedules of real life. So I just throw that out there, but I would really appreciate it if we could keep everything in the council weeks that are already defined, and expand as we need. But if we could even keep those same days, Monday and Tuesday, and address those issues, it makes the rest of life so much easier to schedule and address and know how to move forward with the other things that we need to do in our day-to-day lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I will add that for me, starting at 2 is problematic. If I'm starting at 2, especially when Tuesday also starts at 3:30, it's basically taking a half day off work on Monday and then on Tuesday. And so if I do that twice a month, that would take up all of my annual leave, which I already use for other stuff. So anyway, that's part of what we're running into, everybody with different schedules and trying to manage it as best as we can. And so, but again, this is just my schedule. I'm open to what everybody is up to. So maybe the doodle poll that we will send will be on, it seems to want to keep it on the Monday or Tuesday. Actually, there's no room on Tuesday, so it's got to be Monday. I did suggest maybe a Thursday because that is also council week. And I thought maybe that would be something if we're open to a Thursday, nobody's meeting on Thursday of the week of council. Well, that would not work because we have to meet before council meeting. Don't worry about that. Throw that idea away. So that's not going to work. So, but again, I'll send out a poll. I think we'll just try and see if we can keep it after or before. Yes.
Madam Chair, if I might, perhaps there is more flexibility with some of the other committees like budget that they might be able to meet earlier so that we could continue to meet later in the day, but budget could perhaps meet earlier. I know that our council committee schedule has moved without, I know that it hasn't moved with any input from me, that it's just meetings have been moved earlier. So perhaps some of the other committees have more flexibility to meet earlier on a Monday, that we could continue to meet later. But I am part of planning, and planning moved from Tuesday to Monday with no input from the committee. So, I mean, perhaps there's another way we can work with the other committees that also need to meet with other people who have more flexibility, perhaps just something that we could explore.
Okay, thank you. Now, I will say that there's a lot of us on affordable housing that are also on budget. And so that's a part of it. It's something we're going to have to, I think for now, what I will humbly request until we figure it out is that we'll stay after budget. And I don't know, we don't have a lot of bills all the time. And so we'll see how that works. I think part of the recommendation is see how it works every week. Maybe work with budgets to see how much time they're going to need. And if it's a week that budget is going to run until 7, maybe it's something that we can, even though the schedule say 5:30 after budget, maybe then we need to make it 6, or maybe even send an email the weekend of once the chair of budget is look at our schedule to be able to say budget is going to go late. Let's I don't know. I'll talk to Director Cooper and see how we can work it out, and then we'll send out a doodle and get everybody's input and see if we can work out something that works for most people. So don't want to keep us any longer. It's almost 7:30, so thank you all so much for staying late. Councilmember Hauser, you want to say something?
Yes, there for Suffolk, for Colby, for Berkeley, and Sharon, you were each sent an email that you have opened but not responded to regarding the groundbreaking on Thursday. And I have been requested to ask you to please respond with yes or no if you can attend. I would appreciate. Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Allen, your hand is up. Councilmember Allen. I think that may be from before. All right. With no other business before us, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. You have a good night.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.